All right, everybody, here we are, wishing I was fishing with Shaye Baker. We got John Cruz as a special guest tonight. Going to be doing several things. Finally jumping in on the podcast scene. You know, I've watched a lot of guys do it, Facebook Live, whatever you want to call it, YouTube Live, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to get out there and get in the mix of it and see how it goes. Probably going to be a complete debacle, but that's okay. You know, that's how we do things. If you've watched any of my videos on YouTube, you see that there is a pretty realness to it in which I do mess up most of the time, but you get to see it because it takes a lot of editing to get it out. So we're not going to do that. This is the best format for me. Let it run live, and if I mess up, hey, it was live. Can't do anything about it. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a few different segments. We're going to talk about a few products and some of the companies that are helping us get this podcast out there. We're going to have John on, talk about some of the times we spent together and some of the years working together and some of the things that's going on in his career. Talk about missile baits, missile jigs, a couple of his companies. And then at some point, we're going to break down One Angler's Lake. He put out a poll on Instagram and asked for you guys to come out and tell us what lake you want us to break down inside the ANGLR app. So John and I will go through and give you guys some pointers and probably lead you in the absolute wrong direction. But it'll be something. So also do some tips and tricks with some of missile bait stuff, and we'll wrap it up. So without further ado, before I start messing up, we'll bring old Johnny boy in. John, you're coming in 3, 2, 1, apparently. There you go. Hey, John.
What's up, dude?
I'm so glad you're here, man. I was a little nervous there by myself.
I'll hold your virtually. Whoop, wrong one. I'll virtually put my arm around your back. Hey, buddy.
Hey, this is social distancing. This is a great distraction from this mess, but it is a serious deal, all the coronavirus and COVID stuff and everything. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about that we hadn't even talked about kind of leading up to this, but it is something I thought about today. Just like this podcast, I mean, this is adding value to your sponsors where you were supposed to be fishing a lot of tournaments and you're not able to now. So how challenging has it been to go out and try to supplement that exposure that you had kind of both agreed on? What all have you been doing to try to do that from an angler standpoint? And then I want to talk to you from a businessman standpoint about looking for value from other anglers and what they can do to help promote your brands that y'all have an agreement on. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. From as far as with the tournaments, we even got a message again from Bassmaster today that said that we're still planning on having all of our events that we're supposed to be having in 2020. They just, depending on how long this whole quarantine, stay at home, social distancing thing, how long that lasts, and when that curve of the new cases starts to really go down, as far as when we can start actually having events again. But the plan is, as of right now, to finish all of our tournaments in the year. I mean, hell, we may be in December when we finish the last one. We don't know, but that's what our plan is. And I feel like that if we can get all of our Bassmaster events, all of our Elite Series events inside of 2020, that's going to be a big win, no matter when they are.
Yeah.
And, so that's kind of the way I'm looking at that. But in the meantime, this is the best fishing of the year in most parts of the country. So that kind of stinks that the 3 tournaments we've already had postponed would have been just absolute slaughter fest. That's unfortunate, but that's small potatoes when you look at it in the big picture of everything that's going on. So as of right now, I'm focused on a lot of stuff with missile baits, and then I'm just trying to provide as much content as I can through social media. I know social media and internet numbers are up across the board. People are looking for content. They're hungry. They're not 10 million plus people are not working like as they were working, and the people that are working, they're tired of hearing about this coronavirus stuff. They're like, man, it's the weekend or it's the evening. Man, I'm gonna go catch a bass and have some fun, So I'm just trying to put out content to help people learn and catch more fish, and that's kind of the same thing we're doing right here.
What about from a businessman standpoint? You have missile baits and missile jigs. So what do you look for from some of your pro staffers and different guys right now in this time when the typical stuff they would be doing, you can't go out and fish these tournaments even at the opens level and all. So kind of give some advice to guys out there that want to know what they need to do to support those companies they work with while they can't do the normal thing.
Sure. I mean, like a perfect example is Derek Hudnall. This morning, as a matter of fact, he sent me this unbelievable photo that he shot with one of the bass photographers, Andy Crawford, last week when he went out with him. He's got him relatively close. They hooked up last week, and they did a whole gallery for Bassmaster.com. That's already run. He talked about the D-bomb. He showed the D-bomb, caught fish on it. One of our baits, and then, he sent me that. I guess he just got that picture from Andy, and he sent it to me, and he said, by all means, we can use that on social media. So go ahead and put that out there, and just make sure you give Andy Crawford some credit for it. So, I mean, he's still hustling on the back end. He's putting up YouTube videos, and he's still, trying to provide value, even in these times right now. So that's kind of like the perfect scenario. I mean, all of our pro staffers are communicating with us, and I've seemed to be real happy with what everybody's doing.
Good deal. We worked together a good bit over the years. I guess we've known each other maybe probably like 7 or 8 years now. When I first started working in the Elite Series, kind of got to know each other some. And you've always been one of those guys that was there for me whenever I needed something. When I started this deal, the first guy I thought about to call and see if you wanted to do it was you. And you jumped right on. You've helped with uploaded. Whenever I started the online fishing series, kind of came in right off the bat and bought into the idea. You've always been there, and I just want to tell you I appreciate you on that before we get any further into it.
But, yeah, man, you didn't go far enough back, man. You remember that time we were fishing that PAA at Old Hickory, and you blew out a prop hub, and you were looking for one. And I dug through my truck and I tried to find you one, but I had a racing prop hub, and you needed the other one. You need the traditional one. So
I was still trying to make it and not doing too well. That was a fun tournament, man. The practice was great for that one. And by the time the tournament came along, that Old Hickory seems like one of those lakes where if you catch one, you might as well not go back. Like you've caught that fish. Like Fort Loudon's kind of like that for me. It's like these targets, and when you go catch one out of a culvert, and you should be able to go back and repeat that pattern, but it's like you pluck that one resident fish away from some of that stuff. But I remember that now. I forgot about it. Honestly, I think Vincent and maybe
Vincent had one for you or something.
Yeah, somebody that was that's what was cool. Like I was just a young buck, didn't know any. I mean, I knew Greg, but I didn't belong out there. I bought into the PAA to try to fish those higher level tournaments, and y'all were all out there doing your thing, and I jumped in. And whenever I had a problem like that come up, there was 3 or 4 y'all that ran right to the rescue. You've all been there before, but I didn't know. I didn't perceive it happening that way.
Yeah, man.
All competitors, so I was like, I was surprised when everybody came to the rescue. So it was nice.
That's how it works, bro.
Yeah, it was a good introduction to it. But I had actually forgotten about that. A lot of it ran together there after, how it is when you're out there on the road and there's, 150 days, it seems you're out there 135 days or so of that 150. And I don't remember where I was half the time, but it was a good time. So one of the first segments we want to do is one of the companies helping us get this out here is Lowrance. So we want to do a Lowrance ghost story. So we'll talk about
the great name, ghost story.
Yeah. Talk about the new trolling motor a little bit. The only experience I've had with it, and I'll turn you loose, I shot some stuff for bass, wired to fish, angler, several different sites. I did a day on the water with Scott Canterbury, and he had it. And that was the first time I saw it. And one of the coolest things, it's so simple, it's such a small thing, but at the head of it, the R2D2 part, where it kind of reinvented it. But at the head, there's like a little clip there, and it's like a guide for your cable.
Yeah.
And I'm used to snatching up from the midsection of the trolling motor, and all that weight's there. You kind of pull your cable over and put it inside that guide, and it gives you so much more leverage, and it's so much easier to set it and pick it up and all. That was
there's no cables in there. It's wireless that works. So there's no cables in there to get kinked, and it runs right down the bracket. So when you're picking that trolling motor up and putting it down, there's nothing to get hung on anything else in the boat. It's just so neat and tidy. I do love that feature as well. But one of the biggest things for me is that I wanted to see in the Ghost, and when it came up was the anchor feature, and the Minn Kota called it the spot lock. But the thing I like about with the Ghost is that it's extremely quiet, and it keeps you extremely still. And the picture you're showing now is from a video I did as a first look when I first got it out there on the water and kind of was first trying it out. That was actually the very first time I used it. And there's two things that go with it. That 0.1 that you see just to the left there of the bracket, that white puck there, that's the 0.1 antenna, and that is from my experience, it's the most accurate antenna on the market, and it's also directional. So that part keeps you, pinpoint accuracy as far as where you are in relationship to the actual waypoint. And then the other part is the software behind it. It keeps you very still. It doesn't bounce you back and forth, even if there's really no wind blowing. It doesn't bounce you back and forth. It keeps you real still. If it drifts off the spot, it'll just kind of ease you back up onto the spot. It doesn't bounce you back and forth. That's one of the things I've been most excited about. But being that it was so new, they did not, Lowrance did not have the software in order to have the Ghost unit talk with the HDS Live units until just recently. And actually today, this morning, I updated all my units, and I'm looking forward to the next time I'm getting on the water and seeing how many different features you can adjust on the trolling motor. There's a couple extra buttons at the base of it, and those are programmable, so I can change those, just like the buttons on the right side of your HDS Live units. Those are programmable buttons. You can put your preference of what you want on there. I can do the same thing with those two buttons down at the bottom on that Ghost foot pedal. So it's just going to be really, really interesting and really cool to see how all that stuff fits together.
Yeah, that's one awesome piece of machinery. Like I just said, I just had that little bit of time with Canterbury's that day and checked it out, and it was pretty sturdy, like really impressively built as far as the actual,
Solid,
but it's solid. That's the thing that I liked about it, because we're rough. I'm really rough, I'll be honest, on all my stuff, and I need something that won't bump a stump and shatter. So it seems like it's a pretty impressive piece of equipment. But yeah, so what? How fast can you go with that thing? Because
well, it's got a brushless motor in it, and to me, it's not as much about speed, because I don't race anybody with my trolling motor, so to speak. But the biggest thing for me is that the brushless motor is 30% more efficient than a regular motor. So your battery, whatever type of battery you have, I've got lithium batteries, but whatever type of batteries you have, they're going to last, up to 30% longer, because the trolling motor is more efficient as it's being run during the course of the day. And that adds up, man.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, all right, let's move from there to Mercury Moment. And this is actually, I'll put the image up here that kind of inspired this here. I shot, I don't know.
Yeah.
I took my stream out a little too quick there, but yeah, I'm learning this Be Live deal, but we're getting there. So I'm gonna pull you up and let you talk about it. And we got to give him a couple seconds to get in there. So I'm gonna let you talk about it. I pulled you down. I pulled myself down. Yeah. You got to learn what you're doing before you do it. But I don't know what I'm doing, so it's okay.
Oh, it's all good. It worked. Yeah, people got to see the full screen of what that picture looks like, so that's perfect.
I'm gonna let you keep talking about it, but I'm gonna hide myself.
This was on Grand Lake, and this was during the Bassmaster Classic a number of years back, and the wind was piping that day, and I think the first day I had a pretty decent limit, and I had 4 fish for probably, I think it was like 12 or 13 pounds. It was hard to get a bite, but I was catching some decent ones, and I knew that if I had caught one more good fish, I would be right there in contention, right there ready to rock in the last day. And man, I fished till the last minute on the lower end of Grand that day, and I said, man, we're going to cut it close, buddy. We have got to haul ass to get back on time, because I was just hoping I could get one more bite. And man, we were just running probably 60 miles an hour through like 3-foot waves. And about every 10th wave, you would just launch, and jump it, just like Shaye caught the this picture right here. And you just launch, and then, and then you land on another wave, and then you just launch and you land on another wave and just keep on rolling. That's not something I recommend for everybody to do. Been running a bass boat pretty hardcore for a long, long time, even before this, and have a lot of experience doing that. So we got back to the ramp, and we had a few extra minutes, and everything was good. And I turned to my guy and I asked him, I said, man, are you okay? Everything good with that ride? He said, man, that was exhilarating. He said, that was a lot of fun. He said, I'd ride with you any day. And I didn't expect that reaction. I expected more of a, yeah, it was, I'm okay. I didn't get hurt. Or he was like, no, I mean, that was exhilarating. That was awesome. He said, I'll ride with you any day. That was fun. And it was just kind of neat to see that. And then, and since then, that photo has gone everywhere, man. And I don't think I've told you this either, Shaye, that I was putting together a presentation not too long ago, and I typed in bass boat in a Google search, just the word bass boat, and I clicked on images. The first image that came up was that image, but it was not on my website or any bass fishing website. It was on Pinterest.
Wow.
And I clicked on it, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I guess on Pinterest it has the number of times that that the page has been looked at or something to that effect. And the number was like 30, 40, 50,000. I mean, it blew my mind how many people had clicked on that picture in order to register that as the very first image that comes up when you type in. I don't know if that's the same. And I know Google searches are very complex and they're not the same for everybody, but that was the first one that came up for me. And my name was not even associated with anything on that page. So I was like, wow, we've almost made it mainstream with that picture that we did.
Yeah. The interesting thing too, for me, like I'm shooting, like I said, there was a lot of guys. I think I was sitting on a causeway at a bridge that ran, shooting those pictures. And so I'm looking through a viewfinder about that big, and I can't tell what I'm shooting. I'm just shooting. I'm trying to hit the dead center of the boat. And I remember hearing, though, on that one, when your motor came out of the water, I was like, oh, John got me something that time. I went back and looked through them, and there it was. But yeah, that's pretty nuts about it being. I mean, if we could both get a penny for every Google search, we'd probably be doing all right with that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we'd have been doing all right. But yeah, that was pretty wild, and it was a lot of fun. As far as Mercury goes, that was one of the things I could fish until the last minute, until I knew I had to come back and then run in, and I got back in on time. And it's something that you can count on it. Like when I won that tournament in California in 2010, I caught a 5-pounder on my last flip when I was fishing way down south there in that canal. And I had that run. It was like 45 minutes back. And so I caught that fish, literally put it in the live well, told my cameraman, I said, we're rolling, let's go. That's it. That's it. And so I caught that 5-pounder. I chucked out a little minnow. It was about 14 inches long. And man, we hammered down all the way back to the ramp, and we got back with just a few minutes to spare. And, if something would have happened on that run back, I never would have won that tournament. And, that's just one of the things that, and you have a motor that's reliable, and that's just it's what tournament fishing is about. And a lot of those moments would never happen if you didn't have something you could depend on, like that Mercury on the back of my bass cap.
Yeah. Like anything can happen with any motor. And I think the biggest thing is having one that it's very minimal. Like the chances are that much slimmer, because when you're like, I've been in contention a time or two to do pretty good in tournaments, but when you have that bag and you're trying to make that 45-minute run or whatever, and you got a million other things going through your mind, the last thing you want to be worried about for 45 minutes is an eternity when you're listening to a motor run that you've had problems with and you've had power heads blow, and if you had those issues. So when you don't have all that going on, I mean, you would have probably ran back too early to have caught that fish if you had a motor that you weren't confident in. You know what I mean? Like you'd have had to just go ahead and leave and be back 15, 20 minutes early because you were worried about it, and you wouldn't have caught that last fish to win.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you the number of days that it has made the difference between finishing 40th and finishing 20th, or finishing 40th versus finishing 70th, is catching 1 or 2 fish in the last few minutes. because you can fish till the last few minutes. And the new 4-stroke Pro XS is it's all that it was hyped up to be. It's pretty amazing the way that thing is, just the reliability. I haven't seen a power head go out on tour. I haven't seen one go out. I've not, in 2 years, this is, the second year, I'm not seeing a power head be replaced on tour. And so that, to me, that right there is pretty amazing, and a pretty good testament as to what's up with that motor.
One thing, and we're getting pretty braggy on Mercury in general right here, but I mean, they deserve it. So one of the things that amazes me is they built that new plant. I don't even know where it's at, but one of my buddies was telling me about it. It's up north. They built it in the U.S. and they do everything here. In a time like this, it's really important too. They do everything here down to the screws. They make their own screws for the Mercury motors. And that 4-stroke, like you said, I mean, I bought a boat I couldn't afford and ended up having to sell it, but I bought one with that new 4-stroke, and I had it for about 8 months, and that thing was unbelievable. I love it. And
yeah, it's amazing. They're doing a lot of things right there, and they're not settling on anything that they have, and they're constantly improving their props. I mean, they've really innovated a lot the way that they make props to be able to make them at a fast rate, and so now they're making them so they're even more balanced and more consistent and better. And that goes throughout the entire company. Everything that goes into the boat, all those components are constantly being evaluated and upgraded. They're upgrading their machinery to be able to make the motors more consistent. I took a big tour, me and a number of guys on the Mercury Pro team last summer, and it was unbelievably enlightening just to see all the manufacturing. They walked us through every single step of the whole thing. And, they showed us some of the old machines they used to use, a lot of all these new machines that they're bringing in, new assembly lines with all new equipment. It was fascinating and amazing. And I can tell you there's nothing but top-notch, first-rate American technology and American ingenuity going into those engines.
Yeah, that I don't want to throw a number out there because I want to say it was $1 billion they spent on that factory, but it was
more bigger. I mean, it's more than that, I believe, total investment. A little more than, and they've got, I think it was like 1.2 million square feet of a factory or something like that. I mean, just mind blowing. It's huge. It's huge.
Huge. All right, Mercury. We handled the Mercury moment there pretty well. I want to touch on a few of the comments from some of our fans. We have fans, John. We made it. Jerry asked, if you're going to reschedule the Smith Mountain Lake missile baits only tournament. I think I saw where you had to postpone another one.
We did. Yeah, we postponed the Smith Mountain Lake tournament because that was supposed to be in March, right in the middle of when everything kind of hit. And then in a couple weeks, we're supposed to have our tournament at Smith Mountain Lake. I mean, at Lake Gunnersville, which would have been a dead-on blowout. So we went. That was there. It's still, there's so much up in the air. A lot of people having to plan. We're having to plan, and so we just went ahead and postponed that event as well. That was going to be the first weekend in May, so we're going to postpone that one as well. And I talked with James down there at Parkway and trying to secure dates. And we with the Smith Mountain Lake tournament, we're working with Angler's Choice Marine and their tournament trail. They're going to help us run that event. So we're trying to coordinate whenever they are going to reschedule another event on Smith Mountain Lake, and hopefully have it here. I mean, I don't know when that might be. I know that, come September in the fall when fishing starts to get, more people are fishing, I should say. I wouldn't say it's any better. I'd much rather fish in June, but so I don't know when we might try to schedule this thing, but we're going to look at. I was talking with James about looking at some dates here pretty soon, so we'll try to get something tentatively at least scheduled down, and then once we have a little better idea, we'll be sure to let you know. But yeah, we're going to try to have it in 2020 for sure.
We got somebody here wanting to know. I figured out. Hey, I'm learning. I figured out how we could put this on the screen.
Yeah,
fancy. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about stuff with missile baits and missile jigs here with some tips and tricks. So we're going to allude to that with this.
Yeah. Greg over here is asking about any new lures coming out, man. At the Classic, we just came out with the Quiver. The Quiver 4.5 and the Quiver 6.5. We've never come out with two baits at the same time, but that's the that's the quiver 6.5, and then we got the quiver 4.5, so you can kind of see the difference in the size worms. But that's what we're still promoting and educating people on how to use those. And man, they're selling like wildfire. But I had I had one soft plastic project and one lead project, actually 2 lead projects. And with all this COVID situation, it's gummed up the progress on both of those. So I'm hoping to have at least one of those lead projects ready to unveil at ICAST or around that time frame. But then as far as with the quivers, man, I've got a handful of new colors that I'm planning on. We're planning on coming out with the quiver to kind of build on what we released just a month ago, and so those are. There's a couple of them. I can't wait to get them in my tackle box, to be honest with you. So it'll be pretty cool to get those out there, and then we'll add a few, probably a few D-bomb colors and maybe a few colors in some other baits.
Cool. Well, sitting here still trying to figure out how to pin different people's comments. And Scott Butcher, which is a little throw of love, Scott Butcher's way. He's one of the guys that's get this whole deal together. I know you were on with Butcher a little while back. I've been on his show before.
Yeah, he's got an awesome podcast. Yeah, very different, very intimate, and get to know people like individually very well. Scott's a good dude, talented guy.
Yeah, he's big in the kayak world, and appreciate. He's told me which camera to buy, which light ring to get, which things to say and not to say, and I haven't listened to much of it. I got the right camera and the right light, but we'll see on the rest. So let's see what we're going to do here. And it is a little tricky moving around and doing all this stuff on the back end. I've seen him do it, and he kind of does it pretty smoothly. And I'll sit here and look around for a minute and come back to you, and I'm like, hey, what do you say? I wasn't really paying attention. So it's taking a little used to, but yeah. We got it figured out. We're getting there.
No doubt. What's old Butcher talking about?
Butcher wanted to know, he said he's really liking the spy bait rod for cash, and he'd like to know what the right conditions are for that setup. It's becoming his favorite spinning rod.
Yeah, it's a big long rod. It's a 7.6 medium action, but it's got a real soft taper to it. And I wanted to do that with the spy bait rod, because spy bait is something that I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years how to do that. And then I went to Spro a little over a year ago, and I said, man, I've been throwing the spy bait a lot, and I want to do one. And they said, why? I said, because I want to do one my way. And I want to change up some things on anything that I've ever seen out on the market. I basically had fished everyone that I had seen, Japanese ones, everything. And, each of them are a little bit different. And up to that point, I would say, the Duo Realis is hands down the best one that was out there. But I'm willing to put up the Spro Spin John up against it. But it does a few things a little bit different, has a few little functional improvements. And so when I told Cashin, like, look, I got this rod coming. I got this bait coming. We need to do a rod, because I was using one of the Cashin rods that was a 7.6 spinning rod, but I told him, I said, man, it is like a touch too heavy. And so we did some stuff with the guides to actually change the taper of the rod, and it softened it up just a little bit. And I feel like it was perfect for what I wanted in that, because with the spy bait, you're using 6-pound test as your leader most of the time. And if you're doing that, you got to have a tip that's relatively soft, and it's got to have some parabolic bend to it, but you still, because you smallmouth eat the fire out of that thing, if you didn't know. And man, when you throw that out there, you make really long casts, you got to have a long rod with a lot of leverage. So it's a real fine line to where you've got to have a rod with enough leverage that you can really get that hook planted way out there, and you're not going to break off 6-pound line. Really, when you get those fish close to the boat, you don't want to break those fish off. So there's a big fine line there with that rod, and I think that one absolutely totally nailed it. And since I've had it, I've found that it's pretty darn good for some other applications as well. But between my micro jig rod, the drop shot rod, and then that rod, that's pretty much covers most everything I use a spinner rod for with Cashin.
Cool. Well, we'll skip around now and get back to kind of the agenda we had set here, and maybe come back guest comments here in a minute, but let's move to the Anglers Break Down Your Water segment. Now, this is Anglers app. For those of you who don't know, most of you do, you're on the Angler page watching this through Facebook. But if you don't know what Angler is a digital logbook and a million other things. There's a lot of capability to it. We got challenges going on in there now. A lot of different stuff. You can go build a digital tackle box, keep up with all your gear, have kind of like a inventory of what you have and what you need to get. So there's a lot to it. But one of the cool things about it, and we're going to hope the technology works with us here. We're going to pull up the Angler app and we're going to look at one of the suggested lakes. We put out a poll, ask what lake do y'all want us to break down. John and I'll go through and give you some terrible advice. And we got
your advice is going to be terrible, but I think mine's going to be pretty good. I'll be honest.
That's solid. I like the confidence, John. We're going to do Houston Gaddy's. Houston Gaddy gave us West Point Lake. So that's what this beautiful reservoir is here beside us, and that's in the Angler app. So here's West Point. Where do you want to start? You want to go up river, down river, at the dam? What's going on? We got what, spawn and post-spawn, shad spawn going on? What's going on with West Point?
Yeah, right now I would imagine the spawn's going to be rocking and rolling, and they're going to be the shad spawn's probably just starting down there. It would take all of about one morning to figure that out. But if you scroll in a little bit on that lake, I can tell you from where that main ramp is, it's about 2/3 of the way up the lake, something like that.
In the mouth of that, seems like right here, maybe.
Where are you at, bro? Scroll back out. I can't see what you're looking at.
That's kind of up there above the three creeks to the left. I think it's right below that big bridge and causeway and all. Isn't that where the elites took out of when Kennedy won?
Scroll back out. I can't. You're at the lower end of the lake, I believe.
It's kind of, the satellite image is kind of darker on parts of it and lighter on parts.
Okay. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So what we're going to end up having is some of it will be shot in winter pool situation with the water's down.
Yeah, the water's down on that shot. I can see it now because that big brown area right there is the beach out in front of where where we were beaching our boats.
Yeah.
In front of that field where we had the weigh in. Yeah, that's it. So basically from that area of the lake down is good for spawning, man. I mean, they spawned everywhere. Every little pocket, every creek seemed to be pretty good for spawning. And there's a lot of little creek arms and protected pockets, and they were in the backs of almost every one of them. We went there one year when it was on the very tail end of the spawn, and I did catch a few off beds. I know Ish did pretty well in the tournament. He caught most of his fish off beds. I know Skeet made top 10. He caught most of his off beds, and so the spawn and bite is definitely something to go after. But then early in the morning, the first hour, you are a fool not to go after the shad spawn. And basically every bridge on the lake is going to have shad spawn around it, and then there's one or two marinas down on the lower end of the lake. Those ones were loaded. I'm telling you that first hour, the first 30 minutes especially, but that first hour of light was red hot. The spinnerbait, dude, they were just eating the blades off the spinnerbait. Yeah, that was the one, that one right there for sure. And then and like I said, any of those bridges, any rock in the like the secret deal. I'm telling you the obvious stuff. The secret deal were the rocky riprap banks that are not on bridges. If you can find some of those on that lake, where those shadows spawn right on them, and it like a little 50-foot section ain't going to cut it. It needs to be like a couple 100 feet or a couple 100 yards of rocky bank. If that's riprap right there, what you're looking at, that should be going on.
We're going to say that's riprap for sure.
Well, if it is, that's the kind of stuff that's not that's going to be really key. That is not going to be is going to be overlooked by most anglers that are going out there. But like I said, if you can fish at night, you could probably go to them same places and fish at night and catch you some too, which is a lot of fun. But you just got to be real safe with the recreational boat traffic and not running over shoals and all that kind of jazz. But that's kind of where I would start. The spotted bass are always going to be they don't win tournaments on West Point, at least as of last time I was down there. They don't win tournaments down there, but them spotted bass are always going to be on those shallow, flat, rocky points on the lower end of the lake, any kind of brushy areas. I mean, I'm talking within a mile or two of the dam. That's where those spots seem to gang up, and they'll be even out as far as 10, 15, 20 feet deep, even during the spawn. Those spots seem to stay on them deals, but like I said, that's probably not something that you're going to do to contend to win. The largemouth are going to be what you want to do to win. And then once you messed around with them spawners and you messed around with those shad spawn and stuff in the morning, you can either throw a wacky worm or some type of floating worm action, a quiver, weightless quiver, fishing that, letting it walk around in the backs of those pockets. You'll catch a lot of those fish that are either garden fry or just cruising the banks. And that was one of my main deals when last time we were there, right, on the tail end of the spawn. But then from about where the ramp is up, man, that the buzzbait, buzz toad type bite is a good way to catch a big fish. Now you could do it for 3 hours and not get a bite, but you could also do it for 2 hours and catch 2 5-pounders. So that is a big fish type, hero zero kind of thing. And if you need a big bite or two, that's a good way to do it right around this time of year.
There's a lot of water above that part of the lake. Is it more stained usually because it kind of bottlenecks in these places?
Yeah, it's a little more stained generally. I think the one creek off to the right, from what I remember, is named Yellow Jacket Creek. That's always a good creek. It's got 1 or 2 bridges in it. Yeah, that's Yellow Jacket right there.
So do you like to find the buzzbait type stuff?
Yeah, I mean, just in them pockets, that just running pockets and banks. Like right around that second bridge. I fished a lot in that vicinity. I think the last time we were there.
Cool. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're herring also?
No
West Point herring?
No, not in West Point. Different river system.
There's herring on Lake Martin now. There's herring everywhere, man. I'm tired of it.
I mean, somebody could have planted them in there, but they're not in there. West Point drains into, I think it's I don't know what is that. That's Chattahoochee, I believe, and it runs into another lake and then into Eufaula, I believe.
I think Hardin and then Goat Rock and then Eufaula, I believe.
Goat Rock?
It's like this little lake below Hardin. I've never been there, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, it's like a little river lake. Yeah.
All right, so cool. What about, so gives you something to do up in the day? You got the shad spawn, the spawn. You ever go way up this river?
I've gone a pretty darn good ways up there, to where it got extremely hairy and sketchy. But you can take a jet boat and run as far as you want to run up there, and it gets good. And there's big largemouth and big spots up there. But I mean, you got to go, from what I understand, a pretty darn long ways to get to where the goods are.
Yeah,
and, you can absolutely do it in a a fast jet boat, but to do that in a bass tournament, it's kind of a tough deal, from what I understand.
Yeah, it looks like the water was down a little bit in some of these shots, so you can tell it's pretty sketchy. Yeah,
you come on down a little further is about right about there. Yeah, right about there. There's that big arm off to the right. I went just a little past that.
It's like the water's full. You can slide right in there pretty easy in the back.
Yeah, you can. You can. I went on past there just a little ways, and then I was I got a little tight in the buttocks.
Yeah, got a little drawed up. You drew it. Cool. Good talk. All right. So, what else we got for them on the breaking down your water? Got anything else for West Point Lake here?
I mean, that's West Point right there. I mean, I just see somebody asking about, water temperature to throw topwater. And it doesn't matter if it's Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, North Carolina, Virginia. It seems like 55 degrees is where the topwater starts to come into play. And then 60 degrees is where it really starts to come into play. So, like here in Virginia, most of the water base temperature is 60, maybe a touch over. Topwater is definitely in play if you want to do that. I don't really throw topwater a whole lot until right around towards the end of the spawn. unless I'm throwing a buzz bait in stained water, I'll throw that, 55 to 60 degree water. But if, until I'm throwing like a walking bait or a popper or a frog, I'm usually waiting until the middle or late in the spawn to start throwing that.
What's the coldest water and now I have a reason for asking this question. What's the coldest water you've ever caught a fish on top water?
I think 56 degree water, 55, 56.
I was on West Point one time, a very ignorant young lad, and had a rivet tied on because I had been out there the weekend before. I was practicing for an Auburn college tournament, and I didn't catch much at all that day. It was sunny, it was pretty. It was still very cold, but it was a nice warm week. And I caught like a 3 and a 4 on a rivet, Stanley rivet. And I mean, the water temp was in the low to mid 50s that day. I went back and we'd had a pretty good cold front, and there was no chance they were going to bite that. But I had those 2 fish in my mind. There was like 2 little patches of grass in one of these creeks down here to the left. I can't remember which one it was now. I think it was right around that bridge actually. But I went back, so I spent the first 2 hours, not catching anything, freezing to death, and I pulled that rivet out, and I swear, I think it was actually this bridge. I threw that joker up on the rip wrap, just completely ignorant, and was filling it back. And I had one of the hardest topwater strikes I've ever had in my life. It weighed 646. The water temp was 49 degrees.
Damn.
The bite I had all day. I weighed it in like 10 pounds and won. The guy had a 656 and 4 dinks to go with it and won the tournament. But yeah, that's my whole West Point experience and story right there. I've been there like 4 or 5 times. I do not love that place. It can be really tough, but it can be really good too.
Yeah, I like it. It's not loaded with fish, but it's got some good ones in it. Obviously, as you're talking about.
I'm gonna put a waypoint here in as a useless frog.
Random giant topwater bite.
Frog roll for winter. And that's where I told you that I was going to lead people astray as you tried to help me. I mean, it did happen. It's a fact. But,
I promise you the shadow spawn on that little bridge.
Yeah. So anyway, not right. And it actually may have been this bridge. No, that's not a bridge. Yeah, maybe it was that bridge. It's one of these creeks right here. That's completely useless. But the cool thing is we broke down somebody's water on Angler. So we actually built a map a couple of days ago, you and I, for Lake Hartwell, which is a lake you fished a good bit. And we did the same thing. We've got, I think we ended up with 10 pattern points. We dropped like this, showing you places where you can find fish spawning. That's not a place where John's caught 25 pounds. The point of what we're doing here is to give you some places to look, includes to start your process of going out and practicing and figuring out what you want to do. You can pull up that map inside the ANGLR app. We'll have a link below anywhere this video is posted, and you can go in and pull up the app, and you can see we'll have notes on there where we're marking like a secondary point, which is a good place to look for. I think that was when John was trying to show us where spots were bedding, maybe. Or so you can go in there, and then you can read the note, and then you can look around in the app and drop waypoints that you want to go check. Drop some pattern points around where you want to go check when you do go fish that spot, and try to expand on what he's giving us note wise. So it's a pretty cool deal. We'll have that link to that map of Lake Hartwell for the spawn, and I believe we did spawn and shad spawn and herring spawn were the 3 things we focused on. So that'll be pretty cool. And time to move on to the next agenda item here. Let's see if I can seamlessly hide that. Look at this. I'm so good at what I do. Tips and tricks. We're going to do some tips and tricks with John Cruz, featuring missile baits and some other terminal tackle that you've come out with now. Is that under missile baits or missile jigs?
Missile baits. But I tell you, what I really wanted to kind of break down a little bit is the Neko rig. And first of all, I was calling it the wrong name for the longest time, and it's still hard to break the habit because I want to call it the Neko rig because it looks like. Well, you tell me, what does that look like?
It's Neko, man.
That looks like Neko, right? But Neko would be 2 E's and then K-O, right?
I have no idea, man. I'm bad at spelling. I can write.
Well, this is Japanese. It's a Japanese technique. It is not an American technique. So I was told emphatically by Shin Fukai, it is called Neko rig. He said, not Nico, it's Neko. It is not no Nico, Neko.
I'll take Shin's word for it.
So that's what he said. He said, I swear. He's like, that's what it is. And for the last number of years, I've been playing around with the technique quite a bit. Last year, I caught a good number of fish on the Neko rig. And so with most of the things I do. I designed the quiver. One of the main reasons I designed the quiver was to fish on a Neko rig. And then we had, and this is the, watch out, it's the 4.5 inch Neko quiver right there. And so I want to show you how easy it is to put one of these weights in. Now, I designed these ones for missile, and these are different, unlike anything on the market. We got 1/32 up to 3/16, because that's the range which you'll need for 99% of your Neko rig fishing. So you're going to take the weight, stick it into the head of the worm, just like yay.
Yeah.
And then that's the one part of it. And then the other part, let me find my hook over here. I got so many baits out here, I can't find the hook I want. Oh, here it is. I use one of two hooks. I've started out with this is the Gamakatsu G Finesse. I'll put it against my forehead so you can see it.
I was going to suggest that. That's fantastic.
It's a 1/0. I think the 1/0 works real well. And you're just going to go into the worm right about yay and just harpoon it in the side. Now, some people will use a ring and fish it up, straight up and down, but I don't like doing that. I found the hookup ratio is better this way, and I just don't lose fish, and I like the action. So that's the gist of what a Neko rig looks like. But the other hook that I've been playing around with, and I really like it, is the Gamakatsu G Finesse Stinger hook, and it looks very similar to this, but it's got a longer hook shank. Brett Ayler was using the Stinger. It's a fly fishing hook. He was using that hook on his drop shots, and then Gamakatsu did the G Finesse version with the better wire and all that. But I really like that one as well, and it has a really nice weed guard on it. And so whenever when you're starting out with the Neko rig, if you're using a lightweight like a 1/32 ounce, you really don't need a weed guard. So you can either use this drop shot hook right here, or that Stinger hook, or whatever type of similar hook you like. The setup is 10-pound fluorocarbon leader, 8 or 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. If I'm using the lighter weights, I like the 8-pound. If I'm using the little bit heavier weights, I like the 10-pound. And I use Sunline Sniper. It's just a real small diameter, thin wire, thin diameter, real supple line. I'll use about a 20-foot leader onto 12-pound Sunline braid. That's kind of the setup. I like the John Cruz drop shot rod because it's a counterbalance weight rod. It's a 7.4. It's a little bit longer. So whatever you're using, you want to use a little bit longer rod. You don't want a real short rod for your fishing the Neko rig. You just can't get a good hook set, and it's just a little more frustrating to fish. But then the 16th ounce, you can either use no weed guard or a weed guard. I think it's kind of the in between. I've kind of gone to using a weed guard most of the time with the 16th ounce weight, but if you're using an 1/8 ounce or a 3/16, the heavier weights, those baits are going to be on the bottom quite a bit, and you're going to get hung up a fair amount if you don't put one of those hooks with a weed guard on it. And you'd be surprised at what you can get that. I mean, like, you can get that thing through a brush pile if you have that weed guard on it, and you really kind of just work it and take it easy through those brush piles. For the most part, you can get them through there. So that's kind of what you want to look for with the weights and the hooks, and kind of your setup for those. I use a 3,000 size Daiwa reel. I don't like the little small reels. You have a hard time handling those. But I'm going to fish the Neko rig in areas not as much around docks. You can fish the Neko rig around docks 100%. But if I'm going to a lake that does not have a lot of docks on it, and I have the steeper banks, and or even the slower grade banks, but I'm fishing somewhat around cover, man, that Neko rig is really, really tough on them. It is really good around deeper grass. You're throwing it around those grass lines and just kind of working it through those grass lines. You don't need a weed guard when you're fishing around grass. It seems to come through there real easy, and you can just kind of pull it through there, and boom, they'll just absolutely truck it. So that's kind of like the introduction to the Neko rig if anybody has not had one. Oh yeah,
I like it. Boom.
Angler just put a link on there for an article they did with Brandon Polinick, and he and I have actually talked about the Neko rig a little bit. So whatever he's got to say, I would agree.
Yeah, he's pretty good too. Y'all both all right. Y'all are way better than, I mean, y'all are better than me at everything. I'll go ahead and say it, but y'all are way better than me at finesse fishing. I tried, man, but I did not come up on that. I didn't own a spinning reel until I was old enough to buy one for myself. My dad gave me 50 bait casters before that. He didn't have a spinning reel other than when we went crappie fishing. But even when I finally got my own spinning reel, I reel it on the wrong side based on what everybody else does, which blows my mind, because if you take a bait caster and you reel it like this, and you pick up a spinning rod, you do the same motion, but everybody goes, nope, let's do this. And I don't know. But hey, that's how
I like it on the opposite side, because it you don't get as much over usage. Because if you held the rod with both rods with the same hand and you reeled with the same hand, you'd be more prone to over usage injuries. And that's one of the reasons I like having the spinning reel this way and then the bait caster this way. Yeah. Is it you kind of mix it up.
You try to flip with the other hand too for that same reason? Or do you flip with your main caster hand?
Well, I mean, not to be like all fancy on you, a lot of guys do it, but I flip and cast with both hands. Yeah. And a lot of it's because you can't hit the right angle. Right. If you only cast right-handed, you'll never be able to hit. You get your lure to a lot of the places where the fish are living, and so you've got to be able to hit them from one side or the other, based on where the cover is, or you might be coming up to a dock. You need to get it that way. You can't get your bait with the right hand. You've got to throw it with your left hand to get it into where the fish is living. So it makes it a lot better to be able to fish with or cast with both hands.
Which brings up our next segment, word of the day, ambidextrous. Go, John. Spelling bee time. Ambidextrous. Yeah. Using both.
I can't spell it.
I can't either. I just added that item.
Yeah.
A good time.
Yeah.
Ambidextrous. I mean, so you do that. You throw with both hands a lot. And
I forced myself to do it early on. I mean, I'm very right-hand dominant, very, very right-hand dominant. I mean, if I throw a baseball or a football or something left-handed, it's not pretty at all. I can throw pretty good. I can throw real well with my right hand, but my left side is not. But just like anything else, it's a learned behavior, and you can absolutely learn it. I've actually learned to throw a football left-handed,
really,
which is kind of fun. I can't throw it very far, but I can throw a spiral. It's pretty funny. But so I did the same thing. I mean, I remember when I was probably 21, 22, I went out on Smith Mountain Lake and I fished docks all day. And I had 3 rods because I knew I was going to need them, all set up the same. And all I did was skip docks left-handed, and blew up 2 of the 3 reels. But that one reel got me finished the day out for me. But I was like 8 or 10 hours, and all I did was cast left-handed and skip. And then I got to where I got pretty comfortable with it, and I've made a choice to just be conscious about it. And there's a number of guys on tour that do the same thing. I would say the majority of the guys are sufficient with both hands. Some are, I think, better than others with their non-dominant hand, but it's just something, if you're serious about your tournament fishing or your bass fishing, you need to learn the opposite hand. It'll make you a better angler.
Taking that same concept to what I was talking about not being fishing, I'll do the same thing. Sometimes I'll force myself. I think when I was I don't know if I was doing an article with you or Paul about spy bait fishing, but that was one of the things that one of y'all recommended, was to just take that one rod out there and fish with it all day, and you'll be amazed at the number of fish you catch. But you're not going to pick it up if you've got 10 other things you have confidence in, and you need to go out there and force yourself to do it.
100%. That's it. That's the deal. And I do that. And one of the things that's been kind of funny is filming those shows with Charlie Ingram, the Fishing Universities. I've done probably 10 or 12 shows with them, and I've done, jerk baits and, crank baits. And we did a spy bait show last year. It just aired recently, and you throw it all day. And even Drew Cook, he was, we invited him to come fish with us. And he's like, man, I don't know anything about a spy bait. And I said, dude, you're going to be fine. He said, why? I said, you're a good fisherman And when you can only use that one lure, I said, you'll figure it out, buddy. And darn if he didn't. He said, man, he had said at the end of the day, you know, we went out to dinner after the first full day of fishing, and he said, man, he said, you're right. He said, they eat that thing. I said, man, I tried to tell you. He said, you know, but it forced him to only fish that one lure. And Charlie was the same way. Charlie had literally caught 2 fish on a spy bait before that show, and he got to where he got the hang of it. He understood it by the end of the 2 days we were shooting.
Well, we'll move to the last segment here, and it's actually one that's been inspired by Scott Butcher. He does a cool thing in his shows where he does rolling out the red carpet and allows you to kind of thank your sponsors, family, friends, the people that are most important to you and what you do every day. And we're going to call ours. What do you do? What's the last thing you do in the show, and the last thing you do before you go fishing? You put the plug in. So we're going to let John put the plug in here and tell us, we're at Easter weekend, so it's a good time to be. It's not Thanksgiving, but it's a good time to be thankful for things. Got a lot going on in the country. Tell us who you're thankful for, and take off with it.
I'm not gonna go too serious with it. I'll be honest. Here in Virginia, I live in Virginia, and our governor is a fisherman. Let's just go ahead and say I may not agree with him politically very much, but he is an avid fisherman. And under the climate that we're in, every state, all their governors are really calling the shots for what happens and what does not happen in each of the states. Like South Carolina had all their boat ramps shut down. Virginia, it said, like on the 3rd line of his executive order, of his stay-at-home order, closing all the non-essential businesses in Virginia, the third line in there says outdoor activities, including fishing, are encouraged, and as long as everybody practices safe distance. And in the last couple of weeks, I have fished more with my kids than I have fished in probably the last 3 years. And the weather's been good, fishing's been pretty good, and I'm extremely thankful that I'm in an area to where I can continue to go fishing, and I can go out there and enjoy it with my family, because I've been doing it and I absolutely love it. And Missile Baits is a small business. We had to close to the public. The public cannot come in there anymore, but we can still operate because we have less than 10 employees, and we're practicing safe distancing from everybody. And we had to kind of change a few policies concerning the UPS and a few other things that I had changed just to try to keep everybody safe in the company. But we're still rocking and rolling and being able to operate. So I'm very thankful for that. And I'm more importantly thankful to be able to keep on fishing in Virginia. And that's the biggest thing for me right now.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of folks around the country, and a lot of, everybody states their own thing right now. And
you can't fish in Maryland. You cannot recreational fish, period. Washington State, they banned all fishing. Even if you own a private pond, you cannot go fish in your own private pond in Washington State. So with Virginia being so close to Maryland and actually encouraging people to go fishing, I'm just thankful that we've got a governor that does know how to fish. I had the benefit of meeting him one time for about 5 minutes, and the entire time we talked, all he talked about was fishing, because he found out 2 seconds into the conversation I was a professional angler. That's all he wanted to talk about. So it was pretty interesting, and that showed me where his real interest was, and I'm glad he does fish.
Well, we're coming up on an hour in on the show, and tell you what we'll do. If you want to, you can hang around. I know you showed me before we got started there. We'll let folks get off here if they want to. That's pretty much the end of the show. But if you want to do a few more tips and tricks or another one or something, I mean, we can hang out for another minute or two if you want to show me something else you got there.
I've been talking about it a little bit recently, and a lot of fish are bedding. A lot of bedding fish going on right now. And when you're out there bed fishing, people kind of like, where do I start? And I don't know. It's interesting to me that people that have very little experience bed fishing, and I took my stepson yesterday. We went bed. That's all we did was just looking for fish on beds and trying to catch them. I was trying to help show him how to work bed fish, and he's very good with finesse tactics and techniques. Really good with the drop shot. And once I told him, I said, "Hey, a drop shot's a really good bait on bedfish." That was like all he wanted to throw, and I had to show him you really need 3 different size baits when you're looking at bedfish, and I call it small, medium, and large. And when I'm looking at small, I'm looking at a little teeny drop shot bait. Like this is our bomb shot. So whatever little drop shot bait you like to throw, that should be your small category that you're using on bedfish. That is really good at some of those finicky buck bass that when they first move up and start making the beds, a drop shot can be a really good way to catch those fish. It can also be a really good way to catch finicky females too, especially middle and later part of the spawn. But then sometimes they don't want that bait off the bottom. They're more related to what's going on the bottom. And then so I go with my medium-sized bait, which is a little Texas rig, baby D-bomb. That's what I kind of like to throw. Color's not as important. I like some sort of brim color, but that's kind of my medium alternative. I throw that in there, and I throw that in there and see how they react. Usually I'll start with the medium size with that baby D-bomb and just kind of see what they do. And if they tilt down and look at the bait, I know they're interested in the bait, and just a matter of, and there's the stash right there. There's Noah with one he caught off the bed on the drop shot, by the way. That was about 3 pounds. Noah's about 6'1", so and got big hands, so it kind of looks it looks smaller than it really was. And then when the fish is interested, but it's not going to commit to that medium-sized bait, it really doesn't seem to show interest in the drop shot. You got to throw something big. Like this is the Missile Baits Destroyer. It is a big. I can barely get it in the frame here. It is a big bait, and when you put it next to, the baby D-bomb, I mean it's almost twice as long. It's almost twice as big. It's a lot bigger presence of a bait, and I've caught a lot of big bass on beds off of that Destroyer. It's something about that bigger bait presence. Like Ish kind of turned me onto that big bait idea when he had that big Ish tube, which is like a 7 or 8 inch tube. And it's something about that bigger presence of bigger bait that drives fish crazy. And that's when I caught yesterday there. That's about a 3.5 pounder I caught on the baby D-bomb. He didn't show. Noah worked that fish for probably 20 minutes with a drop shot. And man, he would look at it and turn on it. And I told Noah, I said, man, you got to throw something on the bottom. And he didn't want to put the drop shot down. So I picked up that baby D-bomb, and on about the second cast, he ate it and spit it. And then a couple casts later, I ended up catching it pretty easily. So that was pretty interesting on like that fish was interested, but I could tell he just didn't want that drop shot. And then once I threw that bait that was on the bottom, boom, he ate that. So just remember small, medium, and large, and whatever kind of baits that you like to throw on bedding bass, and you can catch a lot more of those fish than you probably realize.
What about the micro jig? We did a story for ANGLR a little while back on the micro jig. Do you ever throw it? I mean, I'm sure you throw it for spawners like smallmouth and spots, just blind casting, but do you ever throw it onto a bed?
I do, and it's as far as that little small category, yeah, it can absolutely be a factor. But for some reason in like real close range, I don't like using a jig of any type, flipping jig, whatever. Like if I'm bed fishing, I want to use a soft plastic to where I know I just have a really, really, really high hookup ratio. With those type baits, using the straight shank hooks, like on that, there's that Gamakatsu heavy cover worm hook. I use the same hook on the Destroyer, but it's a 5/0. It's a big meat hook. I just have really, really good hookup ratios with those, and so that's kind of what I end up using more than I do the jigs. That little jig, that little micro jig is hell on the smallmouth. For some reason, the smallmouth they love that little teeny tiny jig.
Yeah, as far as like I said, sight fishing with a jig, I've noticed too. Like they'll grab the skirt, when they get in that mood where they just want to pick something up and tote it out. There's just too much in the weed guard, the skirt, and everything else on the jig that they can grab and take and blow and never even get close to the hook. Or if you do snatch it, foul hook them. So having that solid bait like you're talking about, so it gives you a better chance of being able to visually see them take the bait and know they've got it and they're toting it and they don't have kind of outside the mouth, as far as the hook goes.
Well, yeah, I feel like as well, if you're, when you're talking about sight fishing, I used to use a lot of white baits. I'll mix in a white bait here and there. Sometimes I feel like it does trigger them a little bit, but most of the time I feel like you get more bites with a bait with natural color than you do with a bright color on bed and bass. And the other thing that it forces you to do is it forces you to feel when the fish has got it, rather than the visually seeing it, because you're working that bait, and most of the time you physically can't see your bait, but you're working it by feel. And once you get used to it, you can tell where your bait is, and then you can see the fish. Might look like it picks it up or flares on it, or the fish runs out of the bed. The first thing you do is pick up and check and feel, and if you can feel that fish is swimming off with it, I promise you he's got it in his mouth, and you can put the wood to him. Rather than seeing that fish flare and then all of a sudden you see that white bait disappear. Well, he just flared at it and the bait's still under him. The bait moved, and then you set the hook because you're like, oh, it disappeared. Whack! You set the hook and you end up foul hooking him. I've done it before, and that's one of the reasons I got away from it. And that's one of those little tips I learned from one of the other pros. I think it was, believe it or not, I think it was Kelly Jordan that told me that like a million years ago. He's a really good sight fisherman, and he told me that a long time ago. He saw white bait on my deck, and he goes, yeah, I see you get that rookie white bait, bed fishing bait on your deck, and I, he likes to give people a hard time, and I went up to him later that day after the weigh, and I said, well, hey, what'd you mean by that? Mm-hmm. And he sat there for 5 minutes and explained it 100% to me, and after that. It took time to kind of work into using it and getting experience using it and using the more natural colors. But after doing it for a while, I'll have to agree with him.
You're talking about that made me think of a story. You're talking about the fish, just fishing by feel. When the fish picks it up, starts swimming with it, it's like any other time. I mean, if you're throwing a worm and you feel your line swimming off, fish has got it. And there's a couple of old guys that fish little local tournaments down here with us, and they were fishing together in a little pot tournament, and the guy in the back of the boat, man, he'd get a bite. He'd sit there and he'd say, he's got it. It's got to wait. It's got to wait. He's got it. It's got to let him get it good. And then by the time he set the hook, the fish had spit the bait out.
Yeah.
10 times. And the guy in the front of the boat finally said, hey, buddy, go back here and open that live well lid. He said, all right. So he walked back here and he opened the live well. He said, look at them fish. He said, I'm looking at them. He said, look at them real good. He said, I'm looking at them. He said, they got hands. He said, no, fish ain't got hands. He said, then set the dang hook. If they ain't got in his mouth, he's swimming with it. Set the hook. He ain't got no hands.
That's right.
Then they pretty much a scuffle broke out on the boat, and I think one of them had to go back to the boat ramp. But anyway,
I'll tell you that one other thing that I've realized, and I've had I had this discussion with I vividly remember having it with Wesley Strader one time, was when a lot of times when you're fishing for them fish on a bed, and you feel a thump, and they might pick it up, but they might just pick up out of the whole bait, they might just pick up the tail end of it, and the hook part is not there, but they got the part of it and they're swimming off with it. And that's where, like, a lot of times that white bait will get you in trouble, because the white bait disappears, but the hook part is under their lip and they're swimming away from you and you can't see it. So it looks like they got it all. But one of the things I've done, and I think it's 100% accurate, is that when you think he's got it, just put a little pressure on him. Feel him swimming off. And I have visually seen this happen a number of times, a lot of times, is that when that fish has got that by the tail, a lot of times when you put just a little pressure on him, that fish will readjust and suck the whole thing in. Something about that pressure on their lip, man, they'll suck it all the way in. Or you put that pressure on it and it falls out. And then the fish is going to turn around and swim right back to the bed, and then you're not going to foul hook him, and then you'll pitch it right back in the bed, and then the next time he might pick it up all the way by accident, or he might do the same thing again, and then you pull on him again, and then he'll get it in his mouth. But it does one of two things: either it gets it out of their lip, or it'll make them suck it in even further than when they initially picked it up. And Wesley and I have talked about it. Kobe Krieger and I have talked about that same thing. Both those guys are real good bed fishermen, and we've both seen that be successful.
Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on tonight. Really enjoyed sitting here, and we was wishing we was fishing the whole time, so it's pretty adequate name there. But we got to talk about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say what's up to my buddy Chuck, and Paul Benson is accurate with his statement about Julie. It's half a dozen times a day. Thank you.
Julie's a little firecracker, man.
She's good, man. She's a great asset to the company, and just a gem of a person.
Yeah, she's a good one. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate it. You done spent an hour and 10 minutes, coming up on an hour and 15 minutes with us. That's a good time. And you got anything else you want to say, throw out there before we get done?
Yeah, man. I look forward to seeing who all you're going to have on future shows, and hopefully I'll be able to tune in and watch those. And I'm sure you're going to archive them later in different areas, and that'll be something I'll be looking forward to listening to some other guys break down some lakes and talk about baits and tell some stories and stuff like that. So I look forward to seeing more angler shows, and I appreciate you having me on the very first one.
There you go, brother. I couldn't have picked a better one. I appreciate you bringing that up, because we'll tease the next 2 episodes. We got John Cox up next.
Oh, yeah.
He's maybe the only angler who signed up for the Elite Series and the new FOW Pro Circuit.
He did.
I don't know if he's for sure, but it kind of worked out awesome for him, because he won the FOW tournament, and the schedules were going to conflict eventually. But with the way this happened, I mean, he won $100,000. So we'll talk to him about a lot of stuff. And the next episode will be Jordan Lee, my old college buddy that's done a couple things since we graduated. So we'll have a good time with that. But yeah, appreciate you. We'll be out here talking fishing, and see you down the road, brother.
Good. All right. Thanks, Shaye. Appreciate it to you. Thanks to you, and thanks to Mercury and Lowrance and Cashin, and I can't thank my own company. That'd be kind of silly, but and big thanks to ANGLR. They're doing some good things. I know a lot of the younger guys are buying in to the type of technology that they're doing, especially with that app, and that's kind of the wave of the future. It's where everybody's going.
Yep. All right, brother. Catch you down the road. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap. We're done. Wishing I Was Fishing, episode 1 with John Cruz. It was a good time. Had a lot of good info. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Let us know. Gotta help us get this thing going. Spread it around, share it, like it, heart, and all that stuff. I don't know what all you do to it, but do that for us and help us get the word out. Appreciate you. We'll catch y'all next time.